9 o'clock across the UK.
I think to say about another politician, particularly someone you're governing with, you are putting children at risk when it's not true, is a level of outrageous misinformation I have to say I've not witnessed in the 4.5 years I've been in this government.
The most talked about radio show is here. Call Clegg. 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Leading Britain's conversation. This is Call Clegg with Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Only on LBC.
Good morning, this is Nick Clegg just after 9 o'clock with Call Clegg here on LBC, and you can call now if you want to ask any questions. So the number is, as ever, 0345 6060 973, or email at nickclegg@lbc.co.uk. And of course you can watch, as ever, by going to the website lbc.co.uk. So let's go straight to our first caller, Matthew in Romford. Hello, Matthew.
Hello, Nick. How are you?
I'm right, how are you?
Yeah, we're doing okay. It's a fine day today. About the mess up by Lord Freud yesterday, are we?
Well, is that what you want to talk about?
Well, I think that's the question. But I'd like to change the narrative from what was going on. I'd like to see a solution to getting the disability to work.
Yeah.
And I'd like to see the redistribution of income, what we call taxes, going towards getting the disadvantaged back into work and allowing commercial enterprises to do the right thing socially, but not cripple their businesses. And I wonder what your comments might be on that.
Yeah. Things first, you're quite right. There's a very legitimate debate and very important debate to be had about how you change the tax system, as we have done because of the imprint of the Liberal Democrats in government to give people more money back who are on low and middle incomes, to get more people into work, and, as you rightly say, to make sure that people with disabilities are given as fair chance as anybody else to work. And there's a very sort of serious debate there to be had about how the government and employers can work in partnership to make sure that is possible. I think what was so offensive to people about the remarks recorded at the Conservative Party conference that Lord Freud made was when he used this word worth, and he said, some people with disabilities weren't worth the minimum wage, and I think that is what's quite rightly touched a raw nerve, because it's kind of making a comment about someone's individual value, if you like, worth, and I think that really, that was just so offensive to people. But that doesn't mean, as you say, Matthew, of course, that doesn't mean we shouldn't have a grown-up debate about how we can get more people with disabilities into play. In fact, this government, we've programmes. I forget what it's called. I think Test to Work programme or project where you help out with some of the costs associated with some people with disabilities in the workplace, where the government steps in and helps employers cover some of the costs. So there's a lot of legitimate. I think to say that someone is not worth something is I quite understand, but that's just caused huge offence.
I can understand someone in a heated situation or a discussion situation slipping up on their words. We all do that.
Yeah.
As a seasoned individual in the political arena, maybe he shouldn't have done that. I'd like to have thought naively that if another political party had got the recording of it, which clearly they had, they would have used it as a positive slant to find a solution, and not the negative slant to try and slay ahead. And maybe the political parties, and everyone comes into this bag, I think, to agree. All the political parties need to be more intent on finding solutions instead of finding one-upmanship.
Yeah, look, I've no idea how this how this recording came out or anything as much as you do, Matthew. But I mean, he said what he said, and I think, as I said, there was this word worth, that somehow someone's not worth worth the same kind of rewards in the workplace as somebody else. I think that was deeply distressing and offensive to people. But as I said, and as you quite rightly implied, Matthew, that shouldn't stop any of us having a discussion. And frankly, difficult discussion, because some of these issues are difficult, to get more people with disabilities and with other disadvantages in life into the workplace. That has to be our kind of joint aim. Of course it does.
So, Deputy Prime Minister, good morning to you.
Morning.
Good morning to you, sir. So, when Lord Freud says whether there's something we can do nationally if someone wants to work for £2 an hour, and we've taken a call earlier this morning from a mum whose son unfortunately has considerable emotional health issues, and he was doing just that. He was doing, I don't think he was even getting £2 an hour. I think you recall he was getting £1 an hour. And then because that wouldn't meet the minimum wage, that was all stopped, and now he and his colleagues, they just sit there and watch TV. So if there's someone who wants to work for £2 an hour and is so emotionally challenged they really can't contribute that much, is that wrong?
Look, we already have in society different ways in which, so for instance, this is in a completely different kind of area, but it's still, I think, kind of relevant. So, for instance, as a society, we say it's acceptable to pay apprentices a different kind of minimum wage.
Right.
We have, as you know, we have a minimum wage operating on a different scale depending on your age.
Right.
I, 3 years ago or so, launched something called the youth contract, where we, the government, offered to pay employers, literally sort of cash in hand, if you like, a certain amount of money to incentivise them to take on young people into the workplace, because quite rightly 3 years ago, when we were in the immediate sort of aftermath of the terrible crash, we were trying to make sure that more young people got into work, and thankfully now there are more young people back in work than there were when we came into office. So of course you do think, and as I said earlier in reply to Matthew, we already have a scheme where, for instance, if someone's got
this man who wants to work for £2 an hour, he should.
What I think is wrong, what was just wrong, is to say that someone's not worth something in society. Right. I think that's what, to suggest that someone is worth less.
But can someone, if he so desires, wants to work for £2 an hour, and they accept, unfortunately, whatever...
What we're saying to... hang on, but Nick, as you know, the law is the law about the minimum wage. You've got to pay the minimum wage, because that's what we as a society...
But at this day centre, they had a lovely time for, I think, £1 an hour, just doing fairly menial tasks without in any way being offensive about it. And now they can't do that, so they just sit and watch TV. And the mum said, I'd rather him doing that. At least it brought in something, gave him something to physically to do.
No, sure. Look, there are, of course, there are ways that people can come into an office and help out with its work experience, internships and stuff, which is not covered in the same way by minimum wage employment. If you are an employer, however, and you are employing someone to do a full day's work, you cannot, under the law, quite rightly, basically look out for people who you can shortchange or pay less than you would otherwise have to. And I think it's quite right that we've, as a society, decided to do that. And so far, at least, there's always been a cross-party consensus that is the right thing to do. But as Matthew implied, that doesn't mean, of course, we shouldn't continue to make every effort to get people into work who presently don't have work.
Let's move on to other calls. Where are we going, Deputy Prime Minister?
Rob in Bracknell. Hello, Rob.
Hi there, Nick. I'd like to talk about the virus of Ebola, if that's all right.
Yeah.
If it is so bad and killing many thousands and it's heading to the UK, surely the obvious answer is to abort all planes coming in and out of the UK.
I don't think, Rob, the government act on medical advice. So the chief medical officer said that we should start these screening procedures at Heathrow, and now it'll be extended to the Eurostar and other airports as well. We don't actually have any direct flights from West Africa, so it's all about making sure that we track passengers who come in indirectly from elsewhere. So if we did what you suggest, Rob, you'd have to actually pretty well stop any flight from any other part of the world where someone conceivably might have come to this country. I just don't think we can, put no entry sign across the whole of the United Kingdom. We can't sort of seal ourselves off, so we have to take other sensible measures.
How valuable is somebody's life and somebody's family to just cut off the airplanes just for now? I mean,
well, Rob, as I say, the advice is that the risk to the general public in this country remains low. As you know, the experts have said they do anticipate that there might be a very small number of cases which may may appear in the United Kingdom. We already had one case of that young man, I forgot his name now, who was very well treated.
William Pooley.
William Pooley, that's right. Who was treated, very well, thankfully, in a London hospital. And the NHS, I'm convinced of this, having looked at the plans very closely myself, the NHS, I think, is doing a fantastic job of making sure that it is ready for those small number of cases. And as I said, we've also, on medical advice, started these tests at the airports. But I don't agree with you, Rob, that I think the solution to this, and nor do I actually necessarily think it would work, to somehow just stop any sort of traffic of any person in and out of this country.
Conservative MP down in Dover, Charlie Elphick, is saying they should be screening at Dover Port, Deputy Prime Minister. Your view?
Well, look, we will do what the medical advice says we should do. There is be really open with people here that we cannot, unless you do what Rob says, which is just suddenly sort of stop anyone moving in and out of the country altogether. But you cannot eliminate the risk altogether, because people move around, from continent to continent and from country to country in all sorts of different ways. But we can make sure that we minimise the risk. And as I say, the risk remains low, and that is the advice of everybody who's looked at this. It remains low to the general public. All
right, we move on. Where do we go next?
Sharon in Waltham Forest. Hello, Sharon.
Hello, good morning, Mr. Clegg.
Hi.
I was wondering if I could just put this to you. To me, UKIP appears to have tapped into a sense of listening to people, a sense that he will say what he, do what he says, and whether he's part of a minority government or majority. And, if he says he's going to deliver on the a Euro referendum or control immigration, then I kind of feel that people think that that is what he will do. And so my question to you is do you feel there's anything that you could learn from UKIP or Nigel Farage, given that he's tapped into something and that it is generating a wave of consensus that can't be denied? I mean, clearly they've got their first MP while you are losing deposits.
Well, Sharon, the first thing I'd say is he has one MP. My party has 55 MPs. Let's see what happens at the next general election. I've been leader now for several years, and I've heard the kind of end of the Liberal Democrats predicted almost on a weekly basis, and every time we confound it, and I think we will again. But the point you make is right, is that Nigel Farage is tapping into a very widespread sense of cynicism and anger about mainstream politics, a lot of kind of anxiety about the modern world, a lot of public concern about immigration and so on. Where I don't agree with you at all, Sharon, is that somehow what he says is the answer to those fears and anxieties. And firstly,
I don't think they're the answer either.
No, okay, but
I would not vote him at all. But
yeah, no, okay, But worse than that, I mean, I think he hops around wildly. So one moment he basically says he wants to kind of chop up and privatise the NHS, and now he says he doesn't. And then do you remember the other day they had a tax in the morning on luxury products, and by the afternoon the tax was no longer their party policy. I think what they've got is what a lot of political parties have who are in a similar position, and there are a lot of parties like that around the. I mean, you look at sort of populists in Italy, in France, in the Netherlands, the Tea Party in the States. They're in a sense, they've got the luxury of being able to just sort of say stuff, change their mind, the following day. It doesn't really matter, because what they're doing is they're just, they are, and he does it well and he does it skillfully. They are speaking to people's kind of fears and anger about mainstream politics, but they're not really being put to the test of actually providing answers to them. My own view is if UKIP came into power, got anywhere near power, it would be a complete disaster for this country. And actually, you know what? I think quite a lot of people who might even be supporting it at the moment might even know that, but they just want to give everybody a kicking by supporting UKIP in the meantime. And I think that's what's going on.
That's a sad thing. That's what I'm saying. There's a sense of that, that people are kind of to some degree fed up, to some degree they feel they're listened to, on just even if it's on one point, even though they may be daft for everything else. But I mean, my problem is that you say that they would say one thing and do something else, but this comes back to the fact that had you just stuck to the one thing that would have counted, which was the tuition fees, I think it would have changed something, and that's what I'm kind of. Yeah, sure. No. It's a very legitimate question, Sharon, and obviously something I think about a lot. My own. I mean, if you want, we can talk about that. My view is that I've never hidden from people the fact that I'm not Prime Minister. I didn't win the election, so I don't have the mandate to implement the Liberal Democrat manifesto in full. I wish I did. I wish I was Prime Minister. I wish I could do everything that was in our manifesto. There were compromises, which happens when no party wins an absolute majority. And I also hope, come next year, people will judge me on the countless things that Liberal Democrats have done in government to get people into work, fairer taxes, better apprenticeships, more decent pensions, better childcare, all the things we have
delivered rather than the one thing we couldn't. But, that's for people to judge, and at the end of the day, the people are the boss, not the politicians. But all I would say to you, Sharon, is I think we're in a phase in politics at the moment, and it's not just here, it's in other countries as well. There's a lot of anger, a lot of discontentment, there's a lot of kind of people not even wanting to listen to what mainstream politicians have got to say, and it's very fertile territory for people like Nigel Farage. He does it well, but I don't think what he presents at the end of the day is remotely a solution to the big dilemmas that we face on immigration, on jobs, on cost of living. In fact, I think if you did even half of the things he appears to say, we'd make the country poorer and less secure.
The Prime Minister is going to make immigration a red line in his talks with Europe. Will you be supporting that?
I mean, I have no idea what... I mean, the Conservative Party is in such a complete blind panic now, such a total flap about UKIP, that every day I wake up to new headlines.
It's an emergency break, the Prime Minister
no Conservative has put any proposals to me. They never breathed a word of this within government, and who knows? Look, maybe the press release that they issue, or press briefing they issue tomorrow, will be different. I think the Conservative Party have got a fundamental problem. They're running after UKIP in a complete panic.
And they've got a fundamental problem.
What?
Deputy Prime, you say they've got a fundamental problem. You lost your deposit in Clacton.
Well, listen, look...
They've got a fundamental problem. What the hell have you got?
Well, the one thing I haven't done is which I think is a huge mistake, is kind of after UKIP in the way that Sharon and I were just discussing, because I
certainly haven't. You got 483 votes in Clacton.
Well, let's
almost
see,
half of the Greens.
Well, let's see what happened. Look, hang on a minute. The one by-election where we went head to head, we won in Eastleigh.
When was that?
The Tories in Eastleigh. That was the one by-election. No, hang on a minute. It was actually when our fortunes were more perilous than they are now. If you really want to look at how the main parties have measured up to UKIP when they've gone head-to-head in by-elections, because let's remember, all by-elections always end up actually being a contest between two front-runners, and all the other parties tend to sort of fall by the wayside. We won. And by the way, at the time, I remember being told constantly we were going to lose. We won. That's the first point. The second point is, look, the Conservatives have got to ask themselves a really fundamental question. Are they going to constantly run after UKIP, which I don't think is going to impress anybody, and only has one destination, by the way, is that they become interchangeable with UKIP, which is what Boris Johnson seemed to imply last week. Well, then why doesn't the Conservative Party leadership just come clean and say what they really want is to leave the European Union altogether, and then let's have the debate. As everybody knows, I think that would be a complete disaster. Yes, reform the European Union, but don't quit altogether, because it would put so many jobs at risk. But I think this constant shilly-shallying, where they kind of every week they say, well, actually, we'll edge a little bit closer to UKIP, I think is a disastrous political strategy for the Conservatives.
Can I feed in an email, if I may, to Mr. Clegg? This comes from Tracy in Hertfordshire, who says, you are the MP... Well, actually, I think she means you are an MP for Sheffield. When the Sheffield United football player Ched Evans comes out, or should he get his job back?
Oh, it's so difficult. Listen, Tracy, this is not for me to decide. It's obviously for Sheffield United.
Well, they're a team you support, I understand. You've done various things with them.
Obviously, both
just
Wednesday and United are local teams. But I think that the owners of Sheffield United and the manager has said very clearly that it's a decision for the owners first to take before he takes any view on this.
You must have a view.
If you could just let me finish, you might hear what my view is. Good. Listeners not aware, by the way, that Nick Ferrari and I are not in the same studio.
I know.
We should
distance between us,
in case it just doesn't sound quite as intimate as it normally does.
Although, bizarrely, I was in Manchester, where you are today, yesterday, with a former leader of the Liberal Democrat Party.
And I rushed up to Manchester to join you. I know. To find that you'd gone southwards. So.
Paddy put his trousers on and went south, and I've come back. Stop that now. There was enough of that on the stage yesterday at the radio festival. I don't need to rehash those old gags. Now, this particular story that we come to...
Sorry, Ched Evans.
Does he put his soccer boots on again?
I think the owners need to think really long and hard about the fact that when you take, a footballer on, you're not taking just a footballer these days, you're also taking on a role model. You're taking on a role model, particularly for a lot of young boys who look up to their heroes on the football pitch in a team like that. And he's committed a very, very serious crime. Now, look, it's not for me or any politician to start saying that when someone served their time, it's not for us to kind of chop and change the rules. It is for the football club to decide.
So you're saying no, he shouldn't.
But I really do think that footballers these days they are major public figures who have a public responsibility to set an example for other people, and I'm sure that will weigh heavily, in the decisions made by the owners of Sheffield United.
Of course, if he was a bus driver, he'd get his job back.
Look, when someone's done their time, they've done their time. I'm not. You know, the last thing I'm going to do is somehow.
You're indicating you don't think. Suppose you did a photo call at. Is it Bramall Lane? Is the ground?
It's Bramall Lane. But
what's their nickname, by the way? What's Sheffield United's nickname?
They're the Blades.
The Blades, right? You do a photo call at the Blades, and there he is in his kit. You're going to shake his hand?
Look, as I say, I didn't even know whether he's going to go back to Sheffield United.
No, I'm just saying, just a little bit of make-believe, but you've left it to the owners, because you're not of an opinion. So the owners think, we paid £3 million for this bloke, which is a lot of money in Sheffield United's terms, we're going to put him back on the pitch. He scores a lot of goals.
My opinion is
there he is in his red and white striped shirt and his black shorts, there we are, filleting for the Blades, in Bramall Lane, offers his hand to the Deputy Prime Minister. What are you going to do?
You're showing a rare glimpse of knowledge about a football team.
Anyone would think I'd researched it.
Hitherto hidden, by the way.
How did you know the nickname, by the way? That went wrong. Now, come on, what do you do?
Look, I'm not going to play that make-believe. My opinion is this. Rape is an incredibly serious offence.
It is.
Unbelievably serious offence, right? He's done his time, but I just don't believe that the owners of the football club can somehow wish away the fact that that has happened, and that will, you know, that is what he will be known for, and that is something which, you know, particularly for the youngsters following that team, they'll always be aware of. And I just, you know, it's not, I think, right for, I know however much you want to push me, I don't think it's right for politicians to tell football clubs what they will do and who they employ. All I'm saying is I think football players these days, they get paid a lot of money, they're public figures, and you know, you can't ignore that.
Lastly, on a related thing, you're probably aware that Judy Finnegan gave views on this on a television show. Her daughter, Chloe Maley, her daughter by Richard Maley, of course, has now had the most vile threats on Twitter. Deputy Prime Minister, there has to be some form of legal action taken against these people, doesn't there? Or a toughening up, or Twitter has to do more, or something has to happen to catch up with social media, Deputy Prime Minister.
Twitter, or some people I've heard recently called Titter, but...
Yes. Hello, who's been listening?
Yeah, well, I hear that, you know, since you've been talking to other people's slip of the tongue,
yeah, I know. Well, none of this is scripted, Deputy Prime Minister. It all comes to the top of my blonde head. It's not bad. I don't give him briefing notes by team of two.
To the much more serious point, I mean, whatever you think of what Judy said, and, you know, she has set out her views and has clarified and so on, it's just outrageous. It is outrageous that people are being as menacing and vile towards Chloe in that way. And there are powers that, of course, can lead to people being prosecuted if they are inciting violence or hatred towards another individual. And these people must stop. They've got to stop. It is just not on in a civilised, open society that someone can say something and that then their daughter gets targeted in such a threatening and offensive way.
Let's get back to Cool Clegg. Who's next, Mr. Clegg?
Samantha in Richmond. Hello, Samantha.
Good morning.
Morning.
After 17 years, I've left childminding. This year alone, we've lost over 4,000 childminders, the main reason being unfair inspections, ridiculous amounts of paperwork. The majority of us work for less than the minimum wage and work over 50 hours a week, and we still are one of the cheapest and most flexible forms of childcare. Is it not now true that this government doesn't want childminders anymore?
No, that's not true, Samantha, and I'd be very interested to hear from you what kind of inspection you felt was being too onerous, and indeed also the paperwork that's being too onerous. But as you know, we have done a huge amount to expand the amount of childcare available, make it more affordable. We're introducing, as of next year, as you know, tax-free childcare for working parents across the country, and of course childminders play a major role in that. But equally, you'll be the first to acknowledge this, having worked in the sector for 17 years and obviously being very experienced, parents also need confidence that the childminders are good childminders. And childminders...
Is that by throwing ridiculous amounts of paperwork at us?
Well, there, Samantha, if you know that's a question of obviously just of degree. If it is ridiculous and it can be shown to be ridiculous, we should always get rid of ridiculous.
When you have childminders leaving this profession because they cannot keep up with legislation that is constantly being brought in, things changing constantly, we have no support. You've got rid of that. You've now brought independent childminding agencies when the majority of us have turned around and said to you, we don't want them. We don't get listened to. The inspection process is absolutely ridiculous. All they want to focus on is paperwork. It is not about the children. We do not get treated fairly.
So, Samantha, could you tell me the one change over the last few years that has done most to sort of, you know, obviously upset you about the treatment of childminders?
The ridiculous amount of paperwork we're expected to do.
And that's increased a lot recently.
If I'm working 50 hours a week, my focus needs to be on the children, not writing down something for an Ofsted inspector. Every inspector inspects differently. That is not fair. I don't know what they expect from me from one day to the next when they walk in my door.
I'll tell you what, Samantha, I know it's too late for you, because obviously you've by the sounds of it, you left the profession. It'd be really helpful for me to get under the skin of this a bit and to really understand from your point of view what extra paperwork you've had to deal with and whether it's reasonable or not. So that if it clearly is unreasonable, I could try and do something about it. Could I get in touch with you separately?
We will take the details, I assure you, and we will pass that over to your office, Deputy Prime Minister.
Yep.
Samantha, stay on the line, talk to one of my team as Mr. Clegg. Where do we go to next?
Next caller is Neil in Gatwick. Hello, Neil.
Good morning.
Morning.
If Hank Robinson on the weakest link can manage to have like 15 contestants, how is it an impartial media not able to manage to get 6 parties on the stage at any one time on every channel, Mr. Clegg?
This is the
leaders' debate.
This is the leaders' debate. This idea. Stay on the line, Neil. I think we're talking about this bizarre 2-3-5 formation as put forward by the broadcasters.
By the broadcasters,
you get cut out of one of them. Clearly,
I know. Outrage. Look, Neil. I mean, this is a proposal from the broadcasters.
Yes.
But you're right, Neil. They could have come up with a different one and said, look, the more the merrier. Let's just do a whole bunch of debates with everybody. Look,
it's not impartial, Nick. If they're pushing you out and pushing other parties out, it is not impartial, Mr. Clegg. I'm really sorry. I'm very annoyed about it.
I know you are, Neil, but don't get annoyed at me. I'm just a jobbing party leader. I'm not.
Well, they're not going to listen to me. They might listen to you. I'd like to see a thing in the paper tomorrow where you're pressuring.
I'll tell you what, Neil. Can you
writing letters to the BBC and the ITV telling them?
Neil, why do you want Mr. Clegg on TV so desperately?
Don't
That's
sound
what I want
so
to know.
surprised, Nick. If you don't mind, can I get you involved in the Lib Dem negotiating team on this? Because I think you're going to do us proud. But no, look, Neil, the basic point is these leaders' debates have got to happen. I really am looking forward to them. I enjoyed them last time.
Would you sign off on a 2-3-5? The 2 being Ed Miliband and David Cameron, which many would say is a little unfair because you've been responsible.
2-3-5.
Well, of course.
Not interested at all. I want a complete spread of every party on every channel.
Right. Okay, Neil, there's no doubt you've got the job. You are heading the negotiations.
Yes. Neil, no, I take your point. And look, of course, everybody's got their own axes to grind, haven't they? Of course, I think it's not right to have the government's record, basically put under scrutiny in one of these debates and not have one whole half of the government there. So of course I don't think that's right. And then other parties have also got their complaints. At the end of the day, a decision needs to be made. And I wanted, the last thing I want is for all this argy-bargy between the parties to be used as an alibi by any particularly of the larger political parties to say I'm kind of wriggle out of having these debates altogether, because that would be cheating the British people. I think the British people like the fact, and you clearly do, Neil, you like the idea of having all of us up there, having to kind of speak for ourselves, having to kind of do battle, if you like, through these leaders' debates, so that you can make up your own minds. And that's the danger, is that people come up with ever more exotic reasons why they don't like this or don't like that, and then you end up with I absolutely don't want to happen. When
Petty Ashdown says, quotes, I know exactly what Cameron will do. He'll say, we'll do it, but the Greens have got to be in it. He'll try to make a mess. Yeah. How do you respond to what Petty Ashdown says?
Well, no, I mean, look, if you are the occupant of number 10 and you've got all the kind of advantages of being able to do all that stuff, from the steps of number 10 and the rest of it, which the rest of us can't, you don't have much of an incentive, do you, to suddenly kind of operate in the same level as everybody else. So it's just a sort of basic rule of politics, I think, that if you are the incumbent,
Mr. Cameron will try and make it a mess.
Well, they clearly are. The Conservatives have come up with one shifting menu of excuses about why they don't like the leaders' debates, but they cannot be allowed to get away with it. They've got to come and be held to account. I'm prepared to be held to account in all the debates, as Neil suggests, not least for what we've done in government. I'm very proud of a lot of the things we've done in government, and I do think it's important that everybody is held to account on the same basis.
Now, you've got a busy agenda up in the north, I know. Can we try one more question? Have you got one more there?
Yes. Jerry in Enfield. Hello, Jerry.
Hello, good morning, gentlemen.
Morning.
I have a question for Mr. Clegg. Mr. Clegg, will you be supporting the Home Secretary in her plans to review the police bail procedures that have been talked about.
No, it's something I've called for in the past. I think there's a real issue, isn't there, when you see these high-profile cases, but of course many other cases which don't get reported, of people basically kept in this kind of limbo, this sort of legal limbo for a very, very long time. That's not the purpose for which bail was originally designed. You know, bail was there so that someone could go about their daily business, but you know, for a relatively short period of time, nonetheless allow the police to marshal the evidence they need, and then obviously, you know, proceed with charges and prosecution in a way that they need to. It was never designed to have someone basically hanging around for a year and a half before the police decide what to do. And I think it's right that the Home Office is looking at this now.
And one final question or point from me before I let you go, Deputy Prime Minister. You talk often and probably quite rightly about the many achievements that you've had in government. One thing from my understanding that you've yet to achieve, or I might be wrong, is that you haven't quit smoking. Do you ever have a cigarette in the park?
You're right to say, Mr. Ferrari, it's an ongoing process. This weaning myself off cigarette. I'm not a sort of heavy stretch of the imagination.
What do we do?
I do have the occasional one, but I don't smoke. I don't smoke in parks as it happens. But I have to say to you, I don't. This proposal that I think you're referring to is from Lord Darzai, who's produced a report for Boris Johnson. And on this, hallelujah, get the drum roll out. I actually agree with Boris Johnson. I don't think it makes any sense really to say, you know, the law is going to you can smoke on that street corner, but you can't smoke on that in that town square, or you can smoke in that part but not in that part. I just don't understand how that would work. But more than that, I kind of think at the end of the day, if people want to make smoking illegal altogether, then they should make that case. But this kind of trying to make it illegal by 1,000 cuts just seems to me, you know, if Lord Darzai wants to say, look, we should just make tobacco illegal altogether, then let's have the debate. It's not one I would support, but I think sort of saying, well, it's going to be illegal in that part of our shared public space, but not in that part. It just doesn't seem to me to make much sense.
How many
and it's a bit too. Very little indeed.
Well, how many in a week? Do you get through a packet a week?
No.
You don't get through a packet a week?
I'm not going to go. Nick, I'm not going to get drawn into this conversation. I'll be running out of time already.
We are. Now, in a sentence, what are you doing up north, Deputy Prime Minister? Tell the listeners.
I'm actually what I'm doing, which is exciting, which doesn't happen very often. I, as you can imagine, in Whitehall,
meeting Lib Dem voters.
No. Well, yes,
we found one. Get up here quick, Nick.
Don't be so facetious. I am doing that, but I'm also doing something which I was going to, which I hope you'd be interested in, is that I chair, as you can imagine, as Deputy Prime Minister, lots of committee meetings of cabinet ministers and of ministers in Whitehall, and one of the ones that I do is a committee where we look at how we can promote local growth, not least in parts of the north, so that we can help deal with this north-south divide. And I thought, well, let's have that meeting in the north rather than constantly having these meetings in the south about the north. And it's part and parcel also of something that I launched over the summer called Northern Futures, where I'm inviting, and we've got 8 open days for open night where people can come with their ideas in various locations across the north of England today, where people can come up with their own proposals about how we can deal with this terrible north-south divide, so that the north can stand on its own 2 feet and rival London and the south-east in the decades to come in terms of economic prosperity and jobs and dynamism.
Well, good luck with that and the colleagues who are working with you. Deputy Prime Minister Nick Clegg, thank you indeed. So, of course, LBC is a national station, so we wish you nothing but good fortune with that. That's Nick Clegg appearing on Call Clegg here on LBC, where news is next.
The Deputy Prime Minister has told LBC the risk of an Ebola outbreak in the UK remains low, but the NHS is prepared for anyone arriving here with the virus.
The experts have said they do anticipate that there might be a very small number of cases which may appear in the United Kingdom. We already had one case of that, William Polo, that's right, who was treated very well, thankfully, in